All right, so in preparation for our schematic floor plan, I'm actually going to work on the simpler architecture since I'm kind of doing everything on the fly for you guys. But basically what you're going to see is there are a few differences between what you see in a completed construction drawing set and what you're going to create for your schematic floor plan, right? I mentioned in an earlier class that for wall types, we start off with generic walls generally, right? And during the design process. So quite literally what you're looking at in Revit looks like this, and it's you kind of set up a grid and well, I mean, you won't really set up a grid unless that's a primary structural feature of your building. Generally, you're just going to do block diagrams and stuff like that. But we have the grid, and we're going to work off. We're going to size our spaces off of the grid. So it's a little different than the design process. But anyway, so what we're going to have to actually do here is look at our drawing and set up our grids to actually go with what the grid spacing is in these drawings. Okay, and I'm just going to focus on this little garage area for now. And then during our lab time, we'll replicate it throughout the rest of the set. So looking up here at the dimensions, I've got grids A and B are 4.5 feet apart. So I'm going to go up here and, well, I've got the numbers on top. It's not that big of a deal. We can change those later. But I'm going to select number 2, type in here 4 feet 6 inches. And then back on my plan, 21.6 to the next. Go back into Revit, select number 3, 21 feet 6 inches. And of course, you know, like if you're just laying out your grids and you didn't pre-lay them out like this, you could actually literally copy and just type in the dimensions you want. That might be a little faster, but yeah, anyway, this is just a linear thing. So then the next one is 20 feet, and I think that's where I'm going to pause it for setting those up this time around. So I'm going to drop another dimension on the other side. Okay, and whoops, wrong one. So this one, our grids, the bubbles are on this side, but we've got 7'6" to the first grid. And 14.6 to the next grid, and then 9.6 to the next grid after that. So I'm just going to do both here. 14.6, and then 9.6. Okay, so this little segment right here is kind of the top corner of that plan. Yes? Are you selecting the grid and then trying to click into the dimension? Okay, I'll come take a look. All right, guys, so get that quadrant set up for you. I think for those of you guys who are working on the other one here, it's probably sensible. The scan isn't really very great. I'm going to rescan these in higher resolution. But just pick a spot to begin with. I guess you could start with this over here where the bathroom is. I will find you a better scan, but you're going to look up dimensions like right here. Those right there. All right, so with this being a schematic plan, we're using generic walls. And once you get your first couple grids in place, you can, I mean, you guys can make the choice. Do I want to do just like a couple grids and then add more on later? That's fine. Or you could go across the whole top of the plan and just do all the grids. Might be a little laborious, but it's there for you if you want to. It's your choice to be efficient. But I just started with this segment for now. But I want to call something to your attention. Okay, the walls here are aligned not to the exterior face of the wall. Do any of you have any idea why?
Because it's not where the foundation is.
Well, yeah, theoretically, yeah, it's not where the foundation is. But generally speaking, and this is a type 5 structure, remember. So it has studs and it has finishes, so on and so forth.
The thickness of everything?
Yeah, it's accounting for the finishes. So in our stud wall, of course, I picked the crappy marker. Your foundation would go down here, something like that, right? The grid is aligned to the exterior face of the stud. And then the finishes, the plywood, sheathing goes on the outside, and then your siding or whatever it is, okay, or plaster or something like that. So that's where, with type 5 construction, this is for your 147 people, that's where the grid lines go, if you're using grid lines at all. And if you dimension it, you're dimensioning it to the edge of stud, not the finish of the wall. So anyway, I want you to be aware of that, and when you go back into Revit, we're just going to do a quick schematic mock-up of that. So real quickly, I'm going to get a little crazy with this. Right, I'm going to do like a dual screeny thing with the two programs. So generally, just an anecdote about working in an office, right? I have two screens here. This is like the setup that I have in my office is two screens. So I'll do Revit on one and Bluebeam on the other, like almost all day long. So anyway, so we're going to grab a schematic wall. You're going to kind of guesstimate what the size is. I'm guessing that these are probably 6 or 8 inch walls, probably 6 inch. I'll start with 6 inch for now. So I'm going to go to wall. There we go. Let's leave it at 8 inch actually for finishes and stuff. So here, remember that when you go one direction, oh, I got to call out one more thing to you before we close this out. So notice how I clicked at the intersection of the grid line and it pulled it along at the center line of the wall. You can change that. You can change it so that it places it based off of a particular side of the wall. So before I actually start drawing the wall, right, I have my wall selected. If you go up to the top middle, it says location line. You can locate it by the core center line, which is what it defaults to, or wall center line. Or sorry, wall center line is what it defaults to. Core center line, finish face of both interior and exterior, and the core face of interior and exterior. So since we're kind of emulating just putting in a generic stud wall, we're going to go with core face exterior, because my building walls are approximately, what you're seeing there, approximately at the exterior, and I'm going to go from there. So when I click here now, you can see that it actually snaps to the exterior face of that wall. Okay, so let me go over here and just kind of zoom out. And this is all this exercise is right now. We're just kind of tracing sort of where that wall is going to be. So I noticed that this wall is a little bit outside, and it goes a little bit beyond that grid, and then I'm going to go back inside, probably 4 feet. Then I'm going to come back out, and then that one stops. And then I'm going to do another wall from about here all the way to the end and all the way to the top. Okay, that's the level of development I want you guys to get to, right? Just generic walls, no doors, no windows or anything yet. Just put the walls in place where they're supposed to be. Okay? Yes?
So what happens when it starts to come inside and it's not on the edge of anything?
Like this?
Yeah.
So generally,
Line, what happens there?
generally speaking, there should be a dimension somewhere. It looks like he's missing a dimension on this one. But you can see here, like with this closet, he actually dimensioned where that wall goes. So in that case, I'm going to do another generic wall here. So I'll grab a generic 5 inch. And the way I do this is I just approximate it, then I dimension it. So I'm going to just go real quick here. I'll do one of that, there. And then I'm going to do a dimension from here to the outside face of that stud. And then that is 6 foot 6 inches. So I can select that wall, say 6 foot 6 inches. Boom. Okay, so now that wall is properly located. And it should be aligned with this wall.
No,
Oh no, it's actually sticking out a little further.
I didn't ask my question properly.
Yeah.
So when we started, we have the wall flush with the grid line.
Mm-hmm.
So when we turn, is that wall thinking it's still flush with some grid line?
Yes, so I'll kind of go over here. It doesn't have to be flush with a grid line. It's just wherever I put my mouse. So see how it's on the inside of my mouse line?
Oh, I got you. All right.
So if I
So
click
it's-
down and it goes that way, then it's going to connect that corner there.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And you can flip it too with the space bar. All right. Any other questions before I release you guys to start doing this? And we're going to kind of, yes.
I'm not going to do this for this project, but in the future, in case I just want to copy and paste a scaled drawing, can we do that?
A scaled drawing
Yeah.
to trace?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. That's a really good question. I will show you how to do that
Okay.
when we come back.